Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio. Brought to you by OnPay. Built in Atlanta, OnPay is the top-rated payroll and HR software anywhere. Get 1 month free at onpay.com. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Atlanta Business Radio, and this is going to be a good one. But before we get started, it's important to recognize our sponsor, OnPay. Without them, we could not be sharing these stories. Today on Atlanta Business Radio, we have John Sambdman with Samson Tours. Welcome, John.
Hi, Lee. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Sure. Before we get too far into things, tell us about Samson Tours. How are you serving folks?
Samson is a company my father started in 1983 to service a need he saw in churches needing a quality transportation just to go to different events. So we started with motor coaches, back then one motor coach. Today we have a total of 64 units and a mixed fleet with school buses, coaches, and minibuses. And we're also a military approved carrier with the DOD, Department of Defense. And it's been challenging through all these 38 years.
Wow.
And I'm just hoping that I don't have to go bankrupt because of the lockdowns and what that's done to my business.
Yeah, I know that it's been a tough time for a lot of folks. Well, what compelled you to get involved in the business? When was it something that your dad was grooming you to just take over, or how did that play out?
Well, if you've ever had a family-run business, it kind of sucks you in like a black hole. It's hard to get out of. But I grew up washing buses, and I went to college, went away to college, came back, and it just stayed with the business. My brother, Tom, and I grew it over time to what it is today. And then my older brother, Kevin, is here with us in an IT capacity. And we've been very successful in getting it, bigger every year with more profit every year until last year hit.
And then last year with the pandemic, I'm sure that affected a lot of people's traveling in general, and then plus these events that were happening, the churches probably weren't having as much need, and all these other things trickled down to you.
Yeah, it all got turned off from one day to the next. It was March 12th, I remember. And on that day alone, we had about $2 million of business just dry up and go away. And we actually lost close to $6 million in business I would have had in 2020. But people just weren't going. Even the military stopped going almost altogether in April. And for the first time in our business history, I filed a $0 income tax report. Sales tax report.
Wow.
Which we've always had some sales taxes, but if all of my trips are military and they're exempt, then I got a $0 report.
Now, if that wasn't challenging enough, there's a lot of other challenges, pressures on the business as well. Can you talk about some of this kind of the lawsuit crazy world that we're entering now, where a lot of folks are targeting truckers and bus people like yourself for lawsuits?
Oh, it's gotten exponentially worse over the last 6 years. I've seen employees injure themselves to get workers' comp cases. This is in my company. And she literally just throws herself on the floor and starts screaming like she's being murdered. And then we have to call the paramedics, and she wouldn't get off the floor. She got about $35,000, but our insurance rates have gone up this year, this current insurance year, 60%. And that's after they went up 30% last year. So we're talking, now I'm paying close to $23,000 per year per motor coach. When we started, it was about $1,750 per year.
Now, is this a function of there's that many more incidents, or is it a function of that maybe some of these lawyers are getting pretty aggressive in their way that they're targeting these transportation companies?
Well, the lawyers have gotten insanely aggressive. And, there have been more incidents, but they're usually small. But what's happened is you're getting a group of lawyers coming from Florida who are very, very good at presenting these emotional cases in court where somebody gets hit by a truck or a bus, and then they have them go have a myriad of medical tests, which cost, $8, $10, $20,000 of tests. And now they can go to court and say, hey, look at all the expensive medical bills this person has. So they need all these damages for, I can go get a bunch of tests done myself on my body. And if I'm healthy, it still costs the same amount of money as somebody who's injured. It doesn't mean you're injured. It just means you spend a lot of money. But they use that as leverage to drive the cases up to a nuclear case is what we're having in Georgia. There have been several cases, what they call nuclear awards, and the millions of dollars, many millions, for just ridiculous things like, I'll just say one case, CSX Railroad. They had a film industry wanted a film wanted to film on their property, a movie, and they said no twice by email. Well, they broke in, they cut the fence, broke in, filmed anyway. Somebody got killed on the set because a train was coming through. They sued CSX, and CSX lost, and it was something in the order of $50 million. I mean, how else can they protect themselves?
Right. Something has to give. You can't just keep picking on one industry over and over without some ramification of this. Is this going to affect, like, you're not going to be able to do your work and that this work won't be done? Or is this something the insurance has to kind of put a cap on things? Or how does this story end?
The problem with insurance is they've lost money 9 out of the last 10 years in the motor coach market nationwide because of all these cases. So they're having to drive their rates up to try to get back to profitability. The problem is I have extreme inelasticity of price on my end, meaning I can't just raise my prices however I want. I've actually had to lower my prices just to stay busy at all. At the same time, I've got a 60% increase in my insurance rates. And on top of that, if they pass this, what do you call that?
There's a new law?
A law for minimum wage. Yeah, they're trying to raise it to $15. So I start at 16 here, but it still will affect everybody who makes more than that, because everybody will say, well, now I'm close to minimum wage. I need to get paid more.
Right. So
you have a pressure to increase those. And I would love to increase what I pay my employees, but to do that, I got to have some relief somewhere else. Something else has to go get cheaper. Or I have to raise my prices, but then I run the risk of not having anybody actually use my service, because there's so much competition now, because there's so little business in this industry. People have actually driven the award prices for military contracts down to prices I haven't seen in 38 years. I mean, we're going cheaper than we did when we started in some cases.
But how is this? You just can't continue on this path to the bottom. At some point, the quality gets terrible. Nobody's going to win at the end of the day here if the price pressures get pushed down so low.
That's what's happening. There are carriers that are going out of business. There's some just operating however they can. That there is some relief in that we have been allowed to not pay on some of our notes. So and my insurance company has given me sort of an a la carte way of paying insurance, where I pay for what I use every day, not just my entire fleet. If I had to pay on my whole fleet, it'd be about $88,000 a month for insurance.
Even if your fleet's just parked?
Even if it's just sitting here. And if I basically declare that these units I'm just going to sit and not use, I still have to pay some insurance on it because there are notes on them. And that might, instead of paying, $24,000 a year, I might pay $8,000 a year. But it's still
right. It adds up.
Oh, you have to pay. I still have to have money to pay it.
Right.
So without the government assistance, which I have gotten one round of PPP and the EIDL loan, the economic injury disaster loan, but that money's been spent. It's gone. I've applied for the second round of PPP, which I was approved, but I haven't gotten it yet. That'll let me bring some employees back, because currently, actually, I'm unemployed. I'm on unemployment. I only have 4 employees actually getting paid, and I'm not one of them.
Right. Well, these are desperate times, cause for desperate measures, and people are doing whatever they can just to stay afloat. And it's a shame that a company the history of yours is having to struggle like this during this time. Now, do you see any relief in terms of, okay, as more and more people get vaccinated, more and more life goes back to the way that it was, a year and a half ago? Is that going to be the way out of this? I mean, there has to be some sense of normalcy and people travel and use your vehicles as they used to in order for you to really make it out of this, right?
True. That the thing that's driving this, at least for my industry and this market, is whether or not the schools are open for in-person schooling, because a lot of what I do revolves around that. And a lot of what people do revolves around school and the venues that the schools take kids to. So as long as that stays closed, as long as everyone's living locked away in their homes in fear to go outside, nobody's going to want to travel in a bus filled with a bunch of other people or go to a venue filled with a bunch of other people. And even if you do social distancing on the bus, which we do, and we have the CDC procedures that we follow to clean the buses. I bought an electrostatic fogger, and we take extra precautions. I put shields up behind the drivers, and they've got masks and gloves, and there's hand sanitizer everywhere. Even so, people are still afraid to go in these large groups. So we've been trying to figure what can we do to use the bus in some other capacity, but nothing's really been working like I'd hoped.
So now, are you just kind of hunkering down and just waiting this out? There's not much you can do until people feel more confident in doing this. Are you exploring other lines of business and to use the trucks and buses in different ways?
Yeah, we have been successful in getting 4 different military contracts that are multi-month, and that's helped. And we have an employee shuttle contract that just started in February, and that's going to be a huge benefit to us. And I'm trying to expand to that. So we're looking at these kind of contracts that's not necessarily the public. And, most people don't really see these go on, but there is a need for some of these larger places that manufacture things that don't have parking for employees. They might have 1,200 employees, only have enough parking for 400. So they would off-site the parking, and we drive back and forth and take the employees to and from work. Those are actually pretty profitable. And we also are looking for more construction contracts where we can do the employee shuttles for construction contracts. We've worked with J.E. Dunn and Fluor and some other large firms successfully. So that's where we're focusing right now, at least until the schools can get back in business.
Now, in the transportation industry, I mean, on top of all of this, the obvious need for some reform, whether it's liability and tort reform here in Georgia, there's also simultaneously a shortage of drivers, right? Like there's a need for trucking and transportation, obviously, because we all want stuff, but you have this kind of liability issue and lawsuits, but then you also have people don't want to be truckers, or they're aging out of being a trucker. Do you find that as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. Actually, I went to D.C. several years ago, and I spoke with Senator Isaacson when he was still a senator about that in his office. And what's happened is they've made the rules so restrictive regarding trucking and what we do, motor coaches over the road through the DOT, that I told them they've taken all the fun out of long distance trucking, because now the trucker, if they don't follow every single little new rule they've come up with, can get fined, thousands of dollars. They can even go to jail. And there was a case where this one trucker was driving along, and he had the green light, and he was going, but a young girl trying to go to make it to school who was running late ran the intersection, ran the light, and killed herself by running into this truck. They actually fined him, the trucker, thousands of dollars, and put him in jail for a year because he was 30 minutes over on his allowed time for driving, his drive time. So their argument was, well, if he had been following the letter of the law, he wouldn't have been there and she wouldn't have hit him. So that's the kind of thing that happens to businesses. We're presumed guilty, and we have to prove our innocence with extraordinary exculpatory evidence that is not always available. I've had several cases with our company where people driving through downtown Atlanta, they'll just change lanes and hit a school bus. You'd think they would see the school bus, but no, they just slam into the side of it. And in every single case, they try to make it my fault or the bus driver's fault. But we have video and I can prove it. And they said, okay, no, it's this person's fault. But that happens almost 100% of the time. And the police actually are part of that problem too, because I had one case where the driver's sitting at an intersection, stopped, and this lady makes a turn and hits my bus. And when the cop comes, he recognizes the children. He knows them. He smells weed from the car. He doesn't want to charge anybody with anything. So everybody leaves. The bus, they're pretty sturdy. It wasn't really hurt. But later she tries to sue me. But because the cop didn't actually take a report because he knew the kids and didn't want to get them in trouble, now I don't have enough evidence to defend myself. But we got out of it. But it's that kind of thing is something you have to deal with, and it costs money. Every time somebody accuses me of anything, even without any evidence, it'll cost you between $5,000 to $10,000 to defend yourself. And then
you also have to put equipment on your vehicles with cameras and all this stuff to to properly defend yourself.
Yeah, and that's $1,800 a unit plus about $30 to $50 a month per unit for the monitoring, times 60. So it's a lot of money I have to put out to try to protect myself from these aggressive, trial lawyers.
Now it's a tough industry, and it's a tough time for folks like you that are kind of doing the important work of the infrastructure of this country. I mean, without a way to get from point A to point B, nothing gets done. I mean, you guys are the unsung heroes of our economy, and I don't think that you're getting enough kind of love here. What can we be doing for you to help you now, John?
I don't know, rent a bus. Well, we have to figure out, we all just have to stop living in fear and start trying to live your life again. At this point, I'd rather just go ahead and get the disease myself, but get it over with. But we have to get out there and live again. You can't just hide away and hope everything goes away. You're looking at now, I was looking at unemployment rates, the U6, which is all of them. I think today it's like 6.7. No, it's 11 something percent. It's 6.7% for the U3, the regular unemployment.
Right.
Which is almost double what it was in January of 2020. So we're not, we've got a long way to go. There's a lot of people without work out here. And now we're running out of unemployment. I've actually run out of it. They're not going to pay me any more money, personally. But
well, hopefully with this vaccine speeding up and getting more people vaccinated, people will feel more confident and less fearful and get out and do more. Now, if somebody wants to learn more about Samson Tours, what's the website? SamsonToursInc.com is where they can find you, John?
Yes. There's a different company that has SamsonTours.com, and we forgot to keep registering it. He's a gentleman out of Florida that takes trips to the Holy Land.
Okay.
He's a nice guy too, though. But the SamsonToursInc.com.
Well, John, thank you for doing what you're doing. You're doing important work, and we appreciate you. And I'm sorry that you're going through this rough patch. And I feel hopeful that we'll all get through this together. Hopefully, in the next 6 months or so.
I'll get through it somehow. I appreciate it.
One way or another. All right. Well, thank you again for sharing your story. This is Lee Cantor. We'll see you all next time on Atlanta Business Radio. Remember, this work could not be done without the support of our sponsor, OnPay. Please support them so we can continue to share these important stories.
Today's episode of Atlanta Business Radio is brought to you by OnPay. Built in Atlanta, OnPay is the top-rated payroll and HR software anywhere. Get 1 month free at onpay.com.